So look at the papers. Alison Sargent is with us here on set. We're going to start with response to the announcements over a dozen Western countries expelling Russian diplomats, aren't you, Alison?
That's right, Stuart. Showing support and solidarity with the UK after it accused Russia of poisoning the former spy Sergei Skripal. A united front from the West that has left Russia out in the cold, according to UK paper City AM. Many papers are reporting that this is the largest expulsion of Russian diplomats since the height of the Cold War. Despite this, though, Russian state broadcaster Sputnik doesn't seem so worried. In this piece on their website, they cite a Russian security analyst named Mark Sloboda, who shrugs it off a bit. He says it's just a political act. According to him, heads of state really like to grandstand. It's kind of a way of expressing their outrage. But whether that outrage is genuine, well, that remains to be seen. Meanwhile, there's one country that got kind of left out of this mass expression of outrage, but not for lack of trying. The Guardian reports that New Zealand wanted to expel Russian diplomats, but no one in the country fit the profile of potentially being a spy. So instead, they summoned the Russian ambassador to New Zealand and reiterated their condemnation of the attack.
But they can't find any. Nice. And the Russian story is on the front page of almost all the British papers as well. But it's also kind of sharing that space, isn't it, with another story. This is new accusations of anti-Semitism against the Labour leader there. This is the main opposition party, Jeremy Corbyn.
Right. Members of the UK's British community, Jewish community, were out on the streets yesterday protesting. Photos of that protest are on the front pages of many UK papers today. If you take a look here at the Times, we see a young woman holding a poster that says Dayenu, which means enough in Hebrew. This latest accusation centers around a Facebook post that Jeremy Corbyn made back in 2012 in support of the artist of an anti-Semitic mural that was slated to be destroyed. Take a look here, Stuart. This is a photo of that mural from the Times. It depicts what many say is a group of Jewish men playing Monopoly on the backs of naked, mostly dark-skinned people. Corbyn has since apologized for this message of support. He said he regretted not looking more closely at the mural before commenting on it.
But a lot of people, though, in the UK, both on the left and the right, politicians really saying that an apology just isn't enough from Jeremy Corbyn.
Right. The right-wing press is somewhat predictably using this as an opportunity to attack the Labour Party. The left-wing press, though, has some more nuanced criticism of Corbyn today. In its editorial, The Guardian says, look, the Labour Party is not anti-Semitic, but that doesn't change the fact that Jeremy Corbyn isn't nearly as tough as he should be on the anti-Semitic pockets of the Labour Party. And it's not as if Jeremy Corbyn is incapable of being tough. They say, he really could be. He just needs to bring the same decisive leadership that he brings to other issues to anti-Semitism. And the reason he doesn't, according to a conservative magazine, The Spectator, well, that's because, according to them, the anti-Semitic blind spot is very common on the left. This writer says he doesn't believe Corbyn is an anti-Semite either, but it's very telling that he didn't notice that this mural was anti-Semitic. This writer says many still fail to see anti-Semitism, and when it does get called out, well, then they dismiss it as sort of conservative, pro-Israel political ploying. But this writer says, no, it really deserves the same response as any other form of discrimination.
And another anti-Semitic story. This is one that's making headlines here in France. This is a piece inside Le Figaro, in fact, that murder of an elderly woman. We mentioned it in the news here in France.
Right, a woman who was actually a Holocaust survivor. She survived the Veldiv roundup here in France, one of France's biggest mass deportation of Jews. She was found stabbed and burned in her apartment, which had been set on fire. You can see a photo of her there in Le Figaro. Her name is Mireille Knoll. Now, French police are treating this as an anti-Semitic murder. They've brought 2 people into custody so far. Le Figaro says it sparked a very powerful emotion from France's Jewish community. It's also brought the issue of anti-Semitism here in France back into international headlines because it's a story that you can actually read in many English newspapers today.
OK. And finally, Alison, a positive story to end on. This is one about overcoming discrimination.
Right, this is a story about Pakistan's first transgender news anchor. She did her first broadcast over the weekend, and since then, headlines have been popping up all over the world, all about her. You can read about her, for example, here on the website of Indian state broadcaster NDTV. Her name is Marvia Malik. She says her story there is no different from that of any other hijra on the street. Now, you may not know what a hijra is. I certainly didn't. That's a word used in Pakistan to describe people who don't fall into the gender binary, so transgender people, also transvestites and eunuchs. They say many Hijra in Southeast Asia do end up living on the streets. They also face rape, murder, and human trafficking. This article points out, though, that Pakistan is actually really leading the charge in the region when it comes to transgender rights. Last year, the government issued its first passport with a transgender category. Now we know they have their first transgender news anchor. And it's not just the government that's really leading the charge. Marvia Malik has seen a huge outpouring of support from people on Twitter. She says all of this appreciation has really been overwhelming.
Yeah, quite unusual. You wouldn't have thought Pakistan would be at the centre of that, but there you go. Good story there from Pakistan. Thank you very much, Alison Sargent with the newspapers on France 24.